You're not tired, you're being used. The real reason you feel drained. If you walk away from conversations feeling empty, heavy, or even a little sick, it is not because you're socially weak. It is not because you just can't handle people. Your nervous system is performing a job it was never consciously hired for. You've been told a softer story. You're just introverted, you're shy, you have social anxiety, you're highly sensitive, maybe even too empathic. This is a comfortable lie. It explains your exhaustion without threatening the social order that quietly depends on you continuing to overfunction, overlisten, and overabsorb while everyone else calls it your personality. Let me show you what is actually happening. Before integration, the empath doesn't simply talk to people. Your entire body enters a state of hypervigilant surveillance. You are scanning micro-expressions, tone shifts, posture changes. Emotional contagion research calls it mirroring. You call it just being present, but your nervous system is running a full diagnostic on the other person's unconscious. You're not just hearing their words, you are metabolizing their unprocessed emotional material. This is not introversion. Introversion is about where you recharge. What you are experiencing is unpaid emotional labor fused with trauma-coded survival. In the absence of proper individuation, your system learned that the only way to stay safe was to anticipate, absorb, and regulate the emotional weather of whoever stood in front of you. You didn't choose this. It was installed. Think about the last harmless conversation where someone unloaded their frustration, their fear, their quiet despair. They walked away lighter. You walked away buzzing, foggy, and strangely guilty. On the surface, nothing dramatic happened. Underneath, your nervous system acted as a living filter, pulling their shadow material into your own body so the interaction could remain smooth, so the relationship could remain intact. Carl Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. What Jung actually observed was a certain type of person who functioned as a container for the collective unconscious of others, a human vessel into which everyone around them poured their disowned rage, shame, and grief. The unhealed empath sits in that role without knowing it has a name, believing they are simply good with people, while quietly drowning in psychological material that doesn't originate from their own history. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You became exquisitely attuned to other people's inner worlds and almost blind to your own. Every conversation became an invisible performance review. Are they okay? Did I say the right thing? Did I soothe them enough to stay safe? Your exhaustion is not random. It is data. It is your body's record of every moment your nervous system agreed to absorb what another adult refused to feel. In this video, you're going to see exactly what happens inside your system when you talk to people, how social dynamics exploit that sensitivity, and what a healed empath becomes when they stop being a sponge and start becoming something far more dangerous to exploitation. Comfortable lie about empaths and why it keeps you small. You've been told that being an empath means you are endlessly open, endlessly giving, endlessly available. You've been handed images of the saintly listener, the soft presence, the person who never turns anyone away. This is a comfortable lie. It flatters you while it keeps you small. It sentimentalizes your sensitivity so you never recognize what it actually is. A highly tuned psychological instrument that, if integrated, becomes operationally dangerous to any system built on denial, manipulation, and emotional outsourcing. Families, workplaces, and relationships that depend on someone quietly absorbing tension cannot afford for you to see this. Before integration, the empath is framed as fragile. You're just too sensitive. You care too much. In reality, what Jung actually observed was not fragility, but overload. You are not weak, you are saturated. Your nervous system is running emotional labor for the collective, processing material that never belonged to you, while everyone praises your compassion and quietly hands you more. The cultural myth tells you a healed empath becomes even softer, even more unconditionally accepting. Let me show you the inversion. A fully integrated empath is not a sponge. They are a precise instrument of perception. They read micro-expressions and contradictions, but they also hold strong boundaries, sovereign emotional regulation, and the capacity to say, "That is yours, I will not carry it." They can sit in the presence of another's rage, shame, or grief without absorbing it, without collapsing, and without rescuing. Integration does not mean you grow a thicker skin and become cold. Awareness is not weakness. Sensitivity is not fragility. Immunity does not mean shutting down your heart. It means you no longer unconsciously participate in other people's unresolved material. You can feel everything without confusing perception with obligation. You can register someone's disappointment and still say no. In the absence of proper individuation, the unhealed empath becomes indispensable to dysfunctional systems. You become the child who absorbs a parent's unspoken hatred so the family can pretend everything is fine. You become the employee who takes on everyone's stress so the organization never has to address its exploitation. You become the partner who metabolizes another adult's trauma while they refuse therapy and call you understanding. Your exhaustion is profitable to these systems. But an integrated empath is a threat. When you stop absorbing, manipulation collapses. Guilt trips bounce back to their source. Emotional dumping meets a clear limit. You refuse to carry what isn't yours, and suddenly the family, the workplace, the relationship has to face its own shadow without using you as a drain. You didn't choose this. Your sensitivity emerged as survival in chaotic, contradictory environments. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. It cost you clarity about where you end and others begin. In this video, I'm going to walk you step by step through what Jung actually observed, what modern psychology confirms about why you feel drained after almost every interaction, and how that same sensitivity becomes dangerous to the control systems that once depended on your self-abandonment. Permanent psychic. Porosity. The unhealed empath's default. State before integration. This is your baseline. Permanent psychic porosity. You walk into a room and your body has already started working before you say a word. You think you're just being present. In reality, your entire nervous system is on silent surveillance. In Jungian language, the unhealed empath lives in a chronic state where the boundary between self and other is thin, permeable, and largely unconscious. Technical term, permanent psychic porosity. Plain definition, you leak. Other people's fear, shame, irritation, and hidden aggression move through you as if your inner world were public property. There is no stable gatekeeper deciding what enters and what is allowed to stay out. Let me show you what that looks like in real time. Someone's tone shifts half a note sharper. Their jaw tightens for half a second when you mention your success. There's a forced laugh that lands just a little too high, and "I'm fine" that feels hollow. The way their eyes go flat when they lie, but their mouth keeps smiling. You notice the heaviness in the room when one person is silently furious, or the invisible shame cloud hovering over the relative who never speaks about what happened. You don't just notice it, you absorb it. You didn't choose this. Your perception was trained into this hyper-receptive state. Emotional contagion research calls it unconscious mimicry. Your mirror neurons automatically echo other people's facial expressions, postures, and emotional tones. In the absence of proper individuation, that echo becomes identification. Their anxiety feels like your anxiety. Their disappointment lives in your chest. Their rage burns in your muscles while you apologize for overreacting. This is not magic. This is not vague energy talk. This is differentiated perception, trauma-calibrated pattern recognition, and a nervous system locked in hypervigilance. You are constantly scanning, tracking micro-expressions, adjusting your own behavior in milliseconds. You manage your face, your voice, your opinions. You run a full internal risk assessment during what other people experience as casual conversation. Is it any wonder you leave drained? The unhealed empath almost never develops this level of sensitivity in a stable, attuned environment. It is built in homes where one parent's mood decided whether the evening was peaceful or explosive. In families where the rules changed depending on who had been drinking, who was depressed, who was secretly resentful. Reading the room wasn't a hobby, it was survival. Accurately predicting a sigh, a slammed drawer, a sarcastic comment meant less harm, more belonging, marginally more safety. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You became a repository for collective material, family secrets, unspoken rage, disowned shame. You walked away from conversations feeling heavy, guilty, inexplicably tired, convinced something was wrong with you, when in reality, you were carrying what everyone else refused to feel. This is a comfortable lie. I'm just too sensitive. No, your sensitivity is accurate. Your filters are missing. And until you understand the exact mechanisms of that porosity, you will keep mistaking other people's unconscious for your authentic self. In the next part, we're going to dissect that mechanism moment by moment, and you may realize that what you call connection has actually been a slow, continuous drain. How your childhood turned you into a human radar system. So let's go back to where this actually started, not in a workshop, in your living room. Before integration, the empath's nervous system is trained, not taught. You didn't sit down and decide to become deeply understanding. You were conscripted. Perhaps you grew up with a parent whose mood dictated the entire climate of the house. If they slammed a door, everyone froze. If they laughed too loudly, everyone braced. Your job became simple. Read them first so you didn't get hurt later. Or perhaps the rule in your family was, we don't fight here. No raised voices, no explicit conflict, just a permanent tension humming beneath the surface. At dinner, everyone smiled, but your body registered the tight jaws, the averted eyes, the way your parents stopped touching each other. Outwardly, there was harmony. Internally, your perception screamed, this is a comfortable lie. Maybe you had a caregiver who was warm and affectionate one day, distant and unreachable the next. You never knew which version you'd get after school, on the car ride home, walking through that front door. So, you learned to scan. The way their keys hit the table, the tone of their hello, the speed of their breathing, tiny signals became high-stakes data. Let me show you what Jung actually observed in dynamics like this. In the absence of proper individuation, the child's psyche fuses survival with emotional intelligence. Hypervigilance isn't a quirk, it's a trauma adaptation. Your nervous system becomes a human radar system, constantly sweeping the environment for shifts in tone, micro-expressions, hidden aggression, unspoken disappointment. If I can feel them, maybe I can stay safe. Think of elite soldiers, security experts, or air traffic controllers. They're trained to detect threats before they fully form, to notice what others miss because lives depend on it. Your battlefield was the living room, the dinner table, the bedroom door at 11 p.m. The car ride after someone wasn't mad, but drove 10 miles under the speed limit in total silence. Perhaps you were the anxiously attached child who believed unconsciously that any misstep could lead to abandonment. Or the fawning child who learned to appease, flatter, and overfunction emotionally to prevent explosions, withdrawal, or cold religious judgment. You monitored everyone's needs so intensely that your own vanished from your internal map. Over time, that hyper-attunement crystallized into identity. The unhealed empath becomes the family therapist, the emotional shock absorber, the one who knows what everyone's really feeling before they say a word. Advanced emotional scanning stops being a situational response and becomes your default way of existing with people. You walk into a room and your body starts working like a surveillance system before you've even said hello. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You didn't choose this. Your system equated merging with safety. Addiction, mental illness, religious rigidity, high achievement pressure. The details vary, but the nervous system conclusion is the same. If I can feel them first, maybe I won't be blindsided, and this is why a simple conversation leaves you drained. You're not just talking, you're scanning, predicting, calming, preventing. In the next part, we're going to expose how that same radar now runs your adult relationships and why every interaction feels work your conscious mind never agreed to do. To the hidden job. Your nervous system is still doing in every conversation. So when you walk into that meeting, that birthday dinner, that one-on-one coffee, you're not just arriving, you're deploying. Your entire nervous system goes to work before you've even sat down. You clock the room in seconds. Who's tense, who's withdrawn, who's overcompensating with loudness. At the table, you're tracking the micro frown that flashes across someone's face when a topic lands, the half-second pause before they answer, the subtle drop in their voice. You adjust your tone, your volume, your posture. You laugh a little louder or soften a little more. None of this feels like a choice, because it isn't. Psychology calls this hypervigilance. In plain language, it means your perception is permanently tilted toward threat assessment. The loop is relentless. Are they okay? Am I okay? Is there tension? Did I say something wrong? Your shoulders tighten a few millimeters. Your jaw locks. Your breath moves from your belly to the top 2 inches of your chest. Outwardly, you look composed. Inwardly, your survival circuitry is running a silent audit of every expression in the room. Before integration, the empath mistakes this for intuition or kindness. This is a comfortable lie. What Jung actually observed is that in the absence of proper individuation, the unhealed empath becomes a monitoring system for other people's unconscious material. You are not just listening to words, you are scanning for danger in their mood, their silence, their disappointment. Your body is bracing for an impact that might not even come. So you start to perform. You put on what trauma research now calls a fawn response, but what you've been taught to name as being easygoing. You laugh when you don't feel amused. You nod when you're unconvinced. You downplay the comment that actually hurt. You mirror their emotional state. More upbeat with the anxious friend, more subdued with the heavy coworker, to keep the field smooth. This is masking as emotional labor, regulating the entire atmosphere so no one explodes, withdraws, or turns on you. Inside that performance are hundreds of micro self-betrayals. You override the boredom when the conversation derails into another hour of emotional dumping. You swallow the irritation when a boundary is crossed, and you hear yourself say, "It's fine, really." You mute your disagreement because you can feel how fragile the other person is, and you decide their comfort is worth more than your reality. Each tiny override costs energy. Each time you abandon your own internal signal, your system has to spend more fuel holding the mask in place. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. By the time you leave, you haven't just been social, you've been running an invisible, high-intensity emotional regulatory process the entire time. Mirror, neurons firing, nervous system scanning, shadow material being unconsciously absorbed and managed. So of course you crash. Not because you hate people, because you have been doing the job of an entire relational system with one exhausted body. In the next part, we're going to expose how this pattern turns you into the default therapist, caretaker, and confessional, and why your exhaustion is actually a map back to the boundaries you were never allowed to have. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You became the therapist of the system. But something else happened underneath that role that no one warned you about. While your perception was sharpening, your boundaries were dissolving. You learned to read micro-expressions, tone shifts, and the slightest change in someone's breathing with clinical precision. You could tell when a parent was about to explode, when a partner was withdrawing, when a friend was lying to themselves before they even finished the sentence. On the surface, this looked like a gift, hyper-attunement, emotional intelligence, survival disguised as talent. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. Every time you scanned, you also opened. You stopped being a separate observer and became an emotional container. You didn't just notice the fear in the room, you felt it as if it were your own. You didn't just hear the shame in their voice, it landed in your body as a heaviness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a fatigue you couldn't explain. Jung had a name for this. He called it unconscious participation. Technical term, simple reality. You are no longer just watching another person's inner world. You are inside it, participating in it, without realizing the moment you crossed that threshold. Before integration, the empath doesn't say, they are anxious. You say, I am anxious, even when nothing in your actual life justifies that level of terror. This is emotional fusion in everyday terms. You walk into a room feeling relatively stable and leave buzzing with anxiety that doesn't match your circumstances. You have a conversation with a grieving coworker and go home carrying a sadness that doesn't belong to any event in your own history. Your mood swings track the emotional weather of whoever you're with. Around one person you're angry, around another you're numb, around another you're euphoric, and you call it connection, when it is actually possession. In the absence of proper individuation, your nervous system becomes a tuning fork for the collective. Emotional contagion, mirror neurons, all the research language simply points to this. Your body is built to resonate. The unhealed empath takes this resonance to an extreme. You don't just resonate, you ingest. Let me show you what Jung actually observed. Over time, you begin to consume other people's shadow. You eat what they refuse to feel. Rage they disown, shame they can't face, grief they keep deflecting with spiritual language, envy they bury under praise. It shows up in you as migraines, jaw tension, back pain, hormonal chaos, or a vague emotional fog that never fully clears. This is a comfortable lie. I'm just highly sensitive. No, your system has become a dumping ground for psychic material that was never yours. Their uncried tears, their unspoken apologies, their unowned aggression, stored in your muscles, your sleep, your mood. This isn't just an interesting sensitivity, it is a slow erosion of selfhood, a quiet self-abandonment dressed up as compassion. And if you listen closely, your exhaustion is already telling you the one thing this entire system is terrified you might finally do next. Emotional dumping, covert narcissists, and why you're the perfect target. The one thing this entire system is terrified you might finally do next is stop being its silent landfill, because that's what you've been for years. The place where other people dump what they refuse to metabolize. In psychology, this has a name. Emotional dumping, not sharing, not mutual support, dumping. One person offloads raw, unprocessed material into another without consent, curiosity, or capacity checking, and then walks away lighter while the other walks away haunted. Healthy sharing has reciprocity. There is an awareness of time, of impact, of your inner world. Emotional dumping has one agenda: relief, their relief. They talk at you, not with you. They rarely ask how you are, and when they do, it's a brief ritual before returning to the main event, themselves. Before integration, the empath mistakes this for intimacy. You think, they trust me. In reality, they're using you as a nervous system. Let me show you how covert narcissistic dynamics lock into this. Covert narcissism doesn't always look grandiose. It looks fragile, injured, perpetually misunderstood. Underneath the self-effacing exterior sits the same entitlement. My feelings are central. Your role is to stabilize me. These individuals are magnetized to anyone who will endlessly validate, soothe, and absorb their insecurity without ever confronting their behavior. They present as wounded, as overwhelmed, as just sensitive. This is a comfortable lie. The unhealed empath hears their story and feels a moral obligation to rescue. In the absence of proper individuation, your identity as caretaker fuses with their identity as perpetual victim. You become the emotional infrastructure that keeps their ego from collapsing while your own psyche quietly erodes. Why are you the perfect target? Because you were trained to prioritize other people's comfort over your own reality. You were rewarded for de-escalating conflict, for swallowing your anger, for making volatile adults feel safe. You didn't choose this. Your survival demanded it. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You learned to hold complex, chaotic emotional material without flinching, and that capacity reads like a beacon to those unconsciously hunting for caretakers. Think about the friend who only calls in crisis. Hours of catastrophic monologue, tears, rage, circular arguments. They hang up saying, "Wow, I feel so much better." You stare at the ceiling, wired and empty. Or the partner who spirals every time life doesn't go their way, expecting you to talk them down, regulate their breathing, restore their hope, and then punishing you if you ever need the same. Or the coworker who vents for an hour at lunch, then returns to their desk, energized, while you drag yourself through the afternoon, strangely hollow. This isn't mysterious energy work, it's emotional labor and unconscious exploitation. Your nervous system is performing functions that belong to theirs: regulation, processing, accountability. You are acting as their external psyche. Of course, you feel drained. You've just done an entire therapy session they will never pay for and never reciprocate. What Jung actually observed was that empaths in this state aren't merely sensitive, they're over-identified with the archetype of the healer. They confuse self-erasure with compassion, and your exhaustion is not random. It is the invoice your body sends every time you agree to be someone else's psychological infrastructure. The moment you see this, a new question appears. What happens when the empath stops absorbing and starts refusing the dump? How your identity quietly formed. Around other people's pain, the moment you stop agreeing to be the dumping ground, something unsettling appears. You realize you don't actually know who you are without other people's pain. This is not an abstract insight, it's an identity crisis. Before integration, your entire sense of self was assembled chronologically around one repeating role. As a child, you learned fastest way to calm the household was to calm one specific person. Maybe it was the parent who cried to you about money, about their marriage, about how you're the only one who understands me. You became the one who listens. You became the one who absorbs. You didn't choose this. Your nervous system made the selection for survival. In the absence of proper individuation, that role hardened. As you moved into adolescence, the pattern evolved, but the structure remained. In the friend group, you became the therapist, the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. decoding breakups, family chaos, self-harm confessions. You became the one who understands, the one who never makes it about themselves, the one people say, "I don't know why I tell you everything," to. What Jung actually observed is that the unhealed empath mistakes this compulsive caretaking for a calling, when in reality it is an unconscious repetition of early trauma. Then adulthood arrived, and the casting call continued. You didn't just end up with partners who were unstable, chaotic, or chronically wounded. You were magnetized to people you could fix, stabilize, or rescue because their volatility matched the emotional climate you were built inside of. You became the partner who holds it all together. You became the emotional anchor, the unpaid therapist, the one who can always handle more. And underneath those roles, a belief system crystallized. You believed your value was in how much you could carry. You believed love meant tolerating what shattered you. You believed your worth increased with every boundary you didn't set, every need you didn't voice, every betrayal you managed to understand instead of confront. You believed that if you could fully map what broke other people, you could finally be safe with them. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. Over years, you buried yourself under layers of borrowed suffering. Each crisis you metabolized became another layer. Each confession you held became another layer. Eventually, your own desires, preferences, and limits didn't just feel distant, they felt shameful to acknowledge. Wanting became selfish. Rest became weakness. Saying no felt like violence. This is how boundaries were distorted in your internal reality. You learned to equate boundaries with rejection and limits with abandonment. So you kept saying yes while your body screamed no. Tension, migraines, autoimmune flares, emotional shutdown. These were your organism's last-ditch boundaries, the somatic barricades your behavior refused to erect. Let me show you the deeper implication. When your body is the only part of you allowed to say no, illness becomes your spokesperson. And until you recognize this, you will keep calling self-erasure empathy. This is a comfortable lie. The next phase of your evolution begins when you stop taking these symptoms as random and start reading them as precise instructions for where your real boundaries belong. When self-sacrifice becomes your currency of worth. When you ignore those instructions long enough, something even more insidious happens. Self-erasure stops being a behavior and becomes an identity. You don't just overgive. You become someone who only feels legitimate when you are emptied out. This is where self-sacrifice turns into currency. In the absence of proper individuation, you start measuring your worth by your level of depletion. If you leave a conversation energized, you question yourself. If you leave it drained, hoarse, and dissociated, you feel strangely reassured. You must have been good. You must have been kind. You must have been useful. Exhaustion becomes your receipt that you paid enough to exist. Before integration, the unhealed empath doesn't notice this conversion. It happens quietly, transaction by transaction. You stay on the phone for 2 extra hours with the friend who never asks how you are. You agree to the family visit that makes your whole body recoil. You keep listening to your partner's rage about their day while your own tears sit unshed. Each yes debits your nervous system and credits your sense of moral worth. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. Your body never agreed to this economy. Somatically, the truth is loud. Your stomach drops when someone says, Do you have a minute? Your jaw tightens when the text comes in from the person who only calls in crisis. Your chest constricts, your breath shortens, your shoulders creep toward your ears. Every cell is saying no, and your mouth still says, "Of course." You even smile. You didn't choose this. Your conditioning taught you that a boundary is a threat to survival. Saying no risks abandonment, conflict, or punishment, so your psyche performs a moral inversion. Saying yes to everyone else feels righteous, elevated, even spiritually superior. Saying yes to yourself feels selfish, guilty, dangerous. This is a comfortable lie. It keeps you obedient to systems that feed on your availability, while convincing you that you are the virtuous one for bleeding out. Research on emotional labor makes this visible in clinical language. Constantly managing other people's feelings, suppressing your own reactions, and performing an acceptable persona, what organizations call surface acting and deep acting, is directly linked to burnout, depersonalization, and chronic fatigue. Translate that into your reality. Every conversation becomes unpaid psychological work. You're not just listening, you're scanning, regulating, preemptively soothing, editing your truth, absorbing their shadow material as if it were your job. So of course you crash afterward. The numb scrolling, the late-night binging, the sudden migraines, the urge to disappear into bed for days, these are not random failures of willpower. They are your system's attempt to reclaim self after hours of self-abandonment. Your psyche is trying to pull your energy back from every person you overinvested in. Let me show you why. If you don't interrupt this economy of worth, your exhaustion won't just follow conversations, it will start to define your entire life. Jung's uncomfortable observation. You as a repository for the collective shadow. Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. Empaths who arrived in his practice weren't collapsing from obvious psychosis or dramatic breakdowns. They were collapsing from contact. On paper, they were fine. High-functioning, often high-achieving, perceptive, deeply compassionate. They could manage careers, relationships, responsibilities. Yet underneath that competence, they described exactly what you describe: inexplicable exhaustion after conversations, depression with no clear trigger, physical symptoms that didn't match their medical charts. This is where what Jung actually observed cuts against the popular narrative that you're just too sensitive or socially awkward. In session after session, he noticed a disturbing regularity. Certain individuals were carrying emotional material that did not originate in their own biography. Their psyche was crowded with feelings, images, and conflicts that belonged to their parents, their partners, their communities, even their culture. Clinically, they did not present with traditional pathology. No grand delusions, no fragmented contact with reality, no obvious cognitive disorganization. Instead, they presented with overload, a nervous system in chronic hypervigilance, a body acting like a filtration plant for other people's unprocessed pain. They were, in Jung's terms, unconsciously identified with the collective. Let me show you what that means in your life. If you walk into a family gathering and everyone is fine, the tension between your parents is never acknowledged. The divorce, the betrayal, the humiliation erased from language, yet your chest tightens, your jaw locks. You leave with a migraine. You become the one who feels what the system refuses to feel. This is the shadow at work. Jung defined the shadow as everything a person, family, or culture refuses to acknowledge. Denied aggression, repressed sexuality, disowned dependency, buried shame, unspoken envy. When that material is exiled from awareness, it does not disappear. It looks for a host. In the absence of proper individuation, the unhealed empath becomes that host. You end up holding the rage that polite families never express. You carry the sexuality that puritanical systems condemn and shame into secrecy. You absorb the terror of failure in high-achievement cultures, where burnout is glorified and collapse is ridiculed. You metabolize the grief in families that never talk about death, miscarriage, addiction, or estrangement. Pattern interrupt. The heaviness you feel after a simple coffee isn't just about the person sitting across from you. It is about the entire network of denial standing behind them, their unshed tears, their unscreamed anger, their unowned need. You didn't choose this. Your survival shaped you into a living repository for the collective shadow because somebody had to register reality. Somebody's perception had to stay honest. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While you were storing everyone else's forbidden material, your own needs, limits, and desires were pushed further and further out of awareness. So when you leave a conversation drained, you're not just tired, you are weighted by a collective refusal to feel. Your body has been volunteering unconsciously as the storage unit, and until you learn how to end that contract, every interaction will keep adding to a warehouse that was never meant to be built inside your nervous system. The paradox: you can read everyone except yourself. And over time, that warehouse has a side effect you were never warned about. You become an expert on everyone else and a stranger to yourself. Consider what this does to your sense of self when, for years, your attention has been trained outward, scanning everyone but you. Your perception has been weaponized for survival. You walk into a room and your nervous system instantly starts running diagnostics. Who is tense? Who is lying? Who is about to explode? Who is silently collapsing? You register micro-expressions, vocal shifts, the slightest change in breathing, but you never turn that same instrument inward. Before integration, the empath becomes exactly that, a highly calibrated psychological instrument permanently pointed away from its own source. You are like a satellite dish, tuned to pick up the faintest emotional frequency from miles away, while the signal at the very center, the one originating from your own body, your own shadow, your own needs, remains blurred, distorted, or muted. You can tell when someone is dissociating in real time, but you cannot tell when you are. This is the paradox. You can read everyone except yourself. You can see when someone is lying to themselves, minimizing their trauma, bypassing their rage, and you feel the discrepancy instantly. Yet when you are asked, what do you actually want? Your mind goes blank, or produces what you think you are supposed to want. You can sense when another person is unsafe, when their energy is predatory or collapsing, but you override your own discomfort to keep them calm, to keep the system stable, to prevent escalation at any cost. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. In the absence of proper individuation, your own internal signals became associated with danger. Wanting too much triggered other people's envy. Saying no triggered their abandonment. Expressing anger triggered their retaliation. So your psyche did the only thing it could to preserve attachment. It dimmed your inner world and amplified your external radar. You didn't choose this. Your nervous system did. When you spend years, even decades, living as a regulator of other people's nervous systems, your own sensations start to feel untrustworthy. Hunger, exhaustion, sexual attraction, boredom, disgust. These basic signals become faint, confusing, or immediately overridden by a learned command: manage them first. Your reality is filtered through other people's reactions. Their relief feels like safety. Their approval feels like truth. Let me show you the end point of that pattern. You leave conversations drained, not because you are weak, but because you are operating as a full-time, unpaid psychological instrument for the collective. The exhaustion is the symptom of this paradox: hyper-attuned outward, hypo-attuned inward. And the next phase is not to become less sensitive, it is to reclaim ownership of where that sensitivity is directed to turn that instrument back toward its source. In the next section, we move from being a regulator of others to becoming sovereign over your own system. Not introvert, not just anxious, what you actually are and are not. So let's be precise about what you are not. You've been told you're just an introvert, just anxious, just a people pleaser. This is a comfortable lie. It keeps the system intact and your exhaustion unexplained. Introversion is about volume, too much light, noise, chatter, stimulation. The introvert is drained by the sheer quantity of external input. They walk into a loud party and feel their energy leaking. You can be in a silent room with one person, no conflict on the surface, and still leave feeling like your soul was vacuumed out. That's not about volume. That's about emotional content, unspoken tension, the unsaid accusation sitting behind someone's eyes while their words stay polite. Before integration, the empath doesn't just hear what is said. Your perception locks onto micro-expressions, voice shifts, the slight pause before agreement. You are tracking the entire emotional field. Research on emotional contagion and mirror neurons simply gives language to what you live. Your nervous system is built to mirror, absorb, and internally simulate the emotional state in front of you. In the absence of proper individuation, this mirroring becomes identification. Their grief feels like your grief. Their shame feels like your shame. Social anxiety is different. Social anxiety orbits around fear of judgment, humiliation, negative evaluation. The anxious person leaves an interaction replaying every sentence, scanning for mistakes, convinced they looked foolish. You can leave an interaction where everyone was pleased with you, where you performed flawlessly, and still feel annihilated, not because you think you did poorly, but because you carried the unprocessed material of the room in your body. Then there is the fawn response. Fawning is a trauma adaptation. Technical term, appeasement. Plain definition, you over-agree, over-apologize, over-accommodate. To stay safe. You smile when you want to scream. You say, "It's fine," when your entire system is in revolt. The unhealed empath often fawns, but not every fawner is an empath. You didn't choose this, your survival required it. You learned that harmony, even false harmony, kept you from abandonment, rage, or punishment. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. Your mirror neurons fire, your body absorbs, your trauma history commands you to appease, and your sense of self quietly exits the scene. What Jung actually observed in such configurations was not weakness, but misdirected power, a psyche operating as an open relay station for the collective shadow with no gatekeeping function. So what are you actually? You are not bad at people. You are a specific configuration, heightened emotional perception, plus hypervigilance, plus learned self-abandonment. You are an instrument tuned to everyone but on yourself. The exhaustion is diagnostic. It maps every place you leave your own side. Let me show you what happens when that instrument is turned for the first time against the very dynamics that trained it, and what it costs the people who have depended on your unconscious compliance. What's actually happening in your body during every conversation. In a conversation, you think you're just talking. You're not. Your entire survival system is running a full internal operation that most people never see and you barely register until the crash. The moment you enter a room, your body is already ahead of you. Before integration, the empath's perception moves faster than their conscious awareness. Your eyes sweep faces, postures, micro-expressions. Your ears are tuned to tone, not words. Your gut is asking a single, primitive question. Where is the threat? Where is the disapproval? Where is the unmet need? that could turn into danger. You haven't said hello, but you're low, but nervous system has already mapped the emotional terrain. This is not imagination, it's hyperarousal. Your sympathetic nervous system, trained by earlier trauma, treats ordinary social contact as a potential battlefield. Heart rate ticks up, muscles brace, breathing shortens. You appear calm, even warm, but internally you're running a high-speed risk assessment on every sigh, every glance away, every pause that lingers half a second too long. Then another layer activates, mirror neurons. Emotional contagion. The unhealed empath doesn't just observe emotion, they replicate it. Someone's anxiety flashes across their face and your own chest tightens. A friend's quiet shame about their marriage sits in their shoulders and your body hunches with it. Technically, this is the brain's automatic mimicry circuitry. In reality, it feels like you are being colonized by other people's internal weather. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You don't merely notice their sadness, you begin to carry it. You don't simply register their anger, you start editing yourself to prevent it from escalating. Their emotional state becomes the organizing principle of your behavior. Your own state disappears into the background. Now add emotional labor. You are not just feeling your feelings and theirs. You are curating the entire field. You monitor your facial expressions so they don't feel rejected. You soften your tone so they don't feel confronted. You swallow the impulse to disagree so they don't withdraw approval. This looks like compassion. In the absence of proper individuation, it is unpaid, unacknowledged management work that burns through real metabolic and psychological energy. Notice what happens when someone becomes critical, upset, or desperately needy. Micro-responses fire. A tiny freeze. Your body goes still, breath held, waiting to see how bad it will get. A subtle fawn. You lean forward, apologize, over-explain, offer reassurance you don't actually feel. Appease patterns appear in your jokes, your self-deprecation, your quick pivot to, it's fine, don't worry about me, you didn't choose this. These are trauma-coded reflexes that prioritize their safety and approval over your authenticity. Then the conversation ends. Outwardly, nothing dramatic occurred. Internally, you have just run an hour-long survival drill. When you finally get alone, the system drops. Sympathetic activation gives way to collapse. You feel exhausted, numb, irritable, blank. Not because you are antisocial, but because your body has been in prolonged micro-survival mode, holding everyone else's material while suppressing your own. Here is the pattern interrupt. Your social battery is not a personality quirk. It is a diagnostic readout of how much unspoken emotional labor and unconscious fawning your nervous system is performing. Let me show you what Jung actually observed when the empath stops doing this. And what happens when you begin to withdraw your body from that invisible contract? To the turning point, from psychic sponge to sovereign instrument. When you begin to withdraw your body from that invisible contract, something shocking happens. The same sensitivity that once felt like a curse doesn't disappear, it mutates, it stops functioning as a porous sponge and starts reorganizing as a sovereign instrument. Before integration, the empath is that sponge. You don't just register emotional frequencies, you absorb and carry them. A co-worker walks into the room seething but smiling, and your chest tightens before they say a word. A partner sulks in quiet resentment, and you immediately scan your last 10 sentences to locate what you did wrong. Your perception is accurate, but your interpretation is enslaved. If I feel it, it must be mine, and if it's here, it must be my job to fix. This is a comfortable lie. It keeps the system around you stable while your interior collapses. In the absence of proper individuation, the unhealed empath becomes unpaid infrastructure for everyone else's avoidance. Your nervous system performs constant emotional labor, masking your own responses, modulating your tone, preemptively soothing others, until social fatigue is not a quirk, but the bill arriving for hours of unconscious participation. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You became exquisitely accurate about other people's shadow material and almost illiterate about your own. You could name your mother's unprocessed trauma, your friend's covert narcissism, your partner's shame, but you could not locate your own anger without feeling like a monster. Integration flips this architecture. The empath as sovereign instrument doesn't stop feeling, they start discerning. Emotional contagion still happens. Mirror. Neurons still fire. Your body still registers the collective field, but there is a split-second distinction. This is in me, but it is not of me. You witness instead of merge. You observe instead of automatically offer yourself as the container. The core shifts are brutal in their simplicity. You move from unconscious participation to conscious witnessing. You can sit with someone's panic without mobilizing your entire system to sedate it. You move from the automatic, yes, of course I can talk, of course I understand, of course I'll stay, to intentional choice. Not now, not like this, not at the expense of my own regulation. You stop regulating other people as a survival strategy and begin regulating your own system first, even if their anxiety spikes when you refuse to absorb it. Let me show you what this produces over time. Emotional immunity that is not numbness. You still perceive subtle shifts in tone and micro-expression, but they no longer hijack your physiology. Boundaries that are not walls. You don't disappear from the collective. You choose when and how deeply you enter. Discernment that is not cynicism. You can identify manipulation, guilt-tripping and emotional dumping without collapsing into bitterness, simply by refusing to host it. And then the most unsettling development emerges. You become someone who can sit in the presence of another's pain, grief, rage, shame, without swallowing it to protect them from their own work. You stop offering your body as a buffer between people and the consequences of their choices. The real question is not how drained you are now. The real question is, who do you become when your nervous system is no longer available as the quiet, compliant infrastructure for everyone else's unconsciousness? That is the turning point we're moving toward next. What a healed empath actually looks like, it's not what you think. When your nervous system is no longer available as infrastructure for everyone else's unconsciousness, you do not become softer. You become visible. And to people who relied on your invisibility, you become threatening. You've been sold an image of the healed empath as endlessly available, permanently serene, universally understanding, the person who will always pick up the phone, always listen, always forgive. This is a comfortable lie. It is simply a more aesthetically pleasing form of self-erasure, a spiritualized version of the same role you played in your family. Absorb, accommodate, disappear. A truly integrated empath looks different. Before integration, the empath orients outward by reflex. They walk into a room and instantly track everyone else's micro-expressions, tone shifts and unspoken tension, while remaining almost illiterate in their own internal signals. After integration, the axis flips. Their first question is no longer, how are they? It is, what is happening in my body right now? Tight jaw, shallow breath, sudden exhaustion. These are no longer dismissed as oversensitivity. They are treated as data, as reality. This internal orientation is not self-absorption, it is self-location. The healed empath understands that without continuous reference to their own nervous system, their perception becomes a weaponizable resource for the collective shadow. They know that emotional contagion is real, that mirror neurons will faithfully echo whatever room they are in, and so they refuse to offer their body as a passive relay for other people's unprocessed material. Their boundaries reflect this shift. They say no quickly and cleanly, no extended essays, no apologetic disclaimers, no compulsive over-explaining to manage how the other person might feel about their limit. The unhealed empath hears a request and instantly calculates, what will happen to them if I don't? The integrated empath hears the same request and asks, what will happen to me if I do? That single pivot changes everything. They do not hold space for every emotional storm that appears. Someone begins to emotionally dump, to offload trauma without consent, to use them as a nervous system landfill. Instead of absorbing, they interrupt. I'm not available for this right now. Calm, direct, unmoved by guilt. Projections and accusations land, but they do not stick. The empath has met their own anger, their own grief, their own desire, so they are no longer unconsciously conscripted to carry those emotions for others. This is what Jung actually observed. In the absence of proper individuation, the empath lives as a repository for disowned shadow material. Integration means they stop volunteering. They can witness rage without absorbing it, sit with grief without drowning in it, notice manipulation as it forms, and simply step out of reach. And socially, their impact reverses. In rooms where they once stabilized chaos invisibly, cracking jokes, smoothing conflict, soothing the volatile parent, translating the narcissistic partner, they now destabilize denial visibly. They name what is off. They refuse to collude with emotional dishonesty. They will calmly say, that's not what happened, in a system built on pretending that it did. Control dynamics that depended on their quiet compliance begin to fracture. Let me show you what happens when that fracture widens, when the empath not only withdraws their absorption, but starts directing that same surgical perception outward consciously as an instrument of truth rather than survival. From drained to discerning, practical shifts to reclaim your energy. When that perception turns outward, your life doesn't magically get easier, it gets sharper, and you can't afford to walk into every interaction unarmed anymore. Before integration, you entered conversations already half gone. Your attention left your own body and rushed into the other person's field, scanning, tracking, managing. Somatically, that looks simple. Your jaw tightens, your breath goes shallow, your shoulders lift, your stomach clenches. Start here. Before you answer the call, before you open the door, before you reply to the message, pause for 10 seconds and check. Where is my breath? What is my tension level? What emotion is actually mine right now? This isn't mindfulness theater. This is re-establishing an internal reference point in a system that trained you to abandon your body on command. During the interaction, notice when your chest locks, when your face starts performing, when you laugh or nod even though something in you goes cold. Afterward, rate it. Lighter or heavier, clearer or foggier, more like yourself or less. That is data, not drama. From there, you begin micro boundaries, not a dramatic confrontation, not a speech, micro adjustments that interrupt unconscious participation. You let the call go to voicemail instead of bleeding out on demand. You end the coffee, catch up at an hour, instead of stretching into 3 while your nervous system silently screams. You allow silence in the conversation instead of rushing to fill it with reassurance, analysis, or caretaking. Pattern interrupt. You do not have to rescue every falling sentence. You resist the reflex to immediately soothe the other person's discomfort. You watch what happens when you don't instantly say, "It's okay, don't worry about me." Some people recalibrate, others escalate. The ones who escalate were never relating to you. They were relating to the container you provided for their shadow material. This is what Jung actually observed in empaths. Once the container stops absorbing, the other person's disowned aggression, shame, and dependency become visible in the raw. So you start running interaction audits. After each exchange, you ask, did I leave more regulated or more agitated? Did I gain clarity or lose it? Did I feel seen, or did I become the stage for someone else's unprocessed trauma? Over a week, a month, a year, patterns emerge. Certain people, certain contexts, consistently leave you emptied. In the absence of proper individuation, you called this love, loyalty, or being a good person. This is a comfortable lie because the moment you act on this data, guilt arrives, anxiety spikes. Your body interprets withdrawal of overgiving as danger because historically it was. The unhealed empath confuses this activation with moral failure. But that surge of guilt is not proof you're cruel. It is the nervous system detoxing from a lifetime of over-responsibility. You didn't choose this. It was wired into you as a survival adaptation. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. It taught you to equate self-erasure with safety, compliance with connection, exhaustion with virtue. Integration means you no longer accept that equation. These shifts are not about becoming harder, colder, or indifferent to the collective. They are about aligning your external behavior with the depth of perception you already possess. You stop being a sponge and become a deliberate transmitter. You decide when to open, when to close, when to engage, when to walk away. Sensitivity doesn't disappear. It becomes precise, chosen action. And once you can feel this difference in your body, the next question becomes unavoidable. What happens when you apply this same ruthless discernment to your closest relationships, your family, your partner, your community? You were never too sensitive. You were never allowed to be sovereign. When you apply that same ruthless discernment to your closest relationships, something shocking happens. Your entire history starts to reassemble itself. Conversations that just made you tired reveal themselves as crime scenes of self-abandonment. Let me show you the arc you've actually lived. As a child, you existed in permanent hypervigilance. Before integration, your nervous system, was drafted into full-time surveillance duty. You read micro-expressions, tracked tone shifts, scanned rooms for danger because the adults around you were inconsistent, explosive, depressed, or emotionally absent. You became psychically porous, not because you were fragile, but because your survival depended on catching the storm before it broke. But here's what that survival adaptation cost you. While your perception sharpened, your boundaries dissolved. You entered what Jung actually observed as unconscious participation. You stopped knowing where you ended and other people began. You didn't just notice their fear, shame, and rage. You metabolized it as if it were yours. Every conversation, every confession, every emotional dump rewired your identity around one role, the absorber. The unhealed empath then builds an entire life around this. You became the family therapist at 12, the partner who always understands, the colleague who takes on the emotional labor no one else will touch. Limits felt like betrayal. Saying "I'm done" felt like violence. So you stayed open, stayed available, stayed drained. And every time you staggered away from a phone call or a visit feeling hollow, you told yourself the same story. I'm just too sensitive. And this is a comfortable lie. You weren't too sensitive. You were never allowed to be sovereign. Your sensitivity was conscripted into the service of other people's avoidance. Your perceptive power became a cleanup crew for their unprocessed shadow, their unowned trauma, their refusal to grow. You didn't choose this. It was assigned to you long before you had the capacity for consent. In the absence of proper individuation, You mistook exhaustion for destiny. You thought, this is who I am. It wasn't. That drained, flattened version of you was a system artifact, the predictable outcome of a reality where your perception was weaponized against your own body. Now you are standing at a different threshold. You are not a broken empath. You are an emerging, integrated empath. The same perception that once fed denial can, through integration, begin to disrupt it. Your presence stops colluding with lies. Your silence stops absorbing projections. Your boundaries start returning responsibility to its rightful owner. So here is your challenge. Choose one upcoming interaction, a call with a parent, a friend who always vents, a partner who expects endless processing, and change one variable. End the conversation 10 minutes earlier. Tell the truth once instead of smoothing it over. Pause and name your limit out loud. Then watch your body. Watch your breath, your muscles, your fatigue level after. That data is your map back to sovereignty. If this landed, do not disappear back into the old system. Stay with this work. Subscribe so your nervous system keeps getting language for what it has always known. Watch the next video on boundaries and sovereignty so you can turn this insight into operational reality. Share this with the therapist friend, the quiet absorber, the one who looks fine and is dying inside. Feeling drained after talking to people is not your fate. It is your invitation. An invitation to wake up to what you actually are, and to finally live as if your perception, your energy, and your life belong to you.